And I've got Don Sharpe in. He's a retired EMS paramedic. He's been on the show a number of times before now, I believe, and he's in studio with me today to talk about these things. So, hey, Don, good to see you back.
Corey, good to see you again. Thanks very much.
Oh, I appreciate you coming in this miserable weather. I mean, this winter's really hanging in this year.
Right? No bugs.
Yeah. So, I mean, where to begin? There's so much to cover on this, but
well, and there's been so much news lately too. I mean, we've had that dysfunction in EMS article that came out in Alberta Views. We had this recent Lights and Siren report from Michael Corman, published by the Parkland Institute and funded by HSAA, the Union of Paramedics. We've had all this in the news lately about this email from a Foothills ER manager, I guess, to her staff, and somebody leaked it to the opposition and the legislature, and that caused a big brouhaha. I could talk about what's going on in healthcare for hours, Corey. I could.
Yeah, well, one I want to talk about, kind of start with the emails we had a couple of weeks ago before we booked you on. And one of the fixes we want to have, I mean, you've talked about these common sense fixes a lot for a long time, was patient transfer. You know, we're using fully staffed and equipped, you know, paramedical vehicles to move a low risk patient from one facility to another. That's taking people off the street who are specialized and trained for emergency response,
right,
and tying them up. So, I mean, it sounds like, okay, we're going to allow some other outside provision of these non-emergency transfers and that, but then they put out this notice for the bids that basically put it right out of bounds. It's like AHS is saying, oh, we're opening the door, but here, basically, you've got to provide us with a fully equipped ambulance if you're going to do it.
Well, and again, let's look at the basics of this problem. Is emergency ambulances, the critical care vehicles that look after the sickest patients, staffed by our very best paramedics. They're a finite resource. And to use those vehicles to transport patients who need a cast change or need to go in to get fitted for orthotics, that's like taking a limousine to the grocery store. It's way more vehicle than that person needs. So let's look at alternative transfers. Let's make sure that those critical care vehicles are available for our sickest patients. And isn't that the problem right now, is a lot of them are stuck in the hospital hallway, right? And they're not available in the community to respond. So it's real easy for me to see the need for alternative transport. This should have been done years ago. But again, HS dragged its feet. I asked them numerous times to look at this issue and they refused. Well, now they're kind of being forced to. And let's remember, when we talk about AHS and the government, they're two different things. AHS is the large bureaucracy that frequently takes instruction from the government, or has in the past, and gone, yeah, we'll get on that. Right? And then they either do it for 6 months and ignore it, or just refuse to do it altogether. So now they've been instructed by the advisory committee to actually enable alternative transport, which right now, Corey, is happening. There's a paramedical company here in town right now that is taking phone calls from the Foothills Hospital. In fact, they have 2 trucks staged at the Foothills right now, private operators, to move patients out of the Foothills Emerge to places where they need to go, stable, non-emergent patients. And there's also, I know every day, because I talk to these people, I talk to the crews. They're taking calls, they're doing transfers from the Peter Lougheed to the Foothills, from cardiac rehab centers to nursing homes. It's happening now, and it's happening with a phone call. Hi, medic, I need an ambulance to move a patient from the PLC to the Foothills. Can you do it by 2:30? Yep, no problem, click. So what's AHS's answer? That's the question. From what I understand, hearing about this new request for interest, is that AHS is going to try to put a mobile data terminal in every one of these transfer vehicles. These vehicles only have to be staffed to or equipped to a minimum standard, I understand, with an AED and a basic first aid kit. They don't have a lot of equipment. They've got a couple of basic providers who are provincially registered. They're trained. They've been hired by a responsible business owner who, probably this isn't his main business, some of them. A lot of them do oil field work, but they have high quality vehicles. They have high quality staff. They're able to start tomorrow moving patients. But AHS is going, we got to go through this whole big rigmarole. We got to make sure, we got to check your financial underwear. We got to have a quick pick at your details. And we got to make sure, I mean, I think it's onerous. I think it's irresponsible. And I don't think AHS can put any of these alternative transport vehicles in that fashion on the street until the end of June. And we need them today.
Well, and
we need them today.
And those vehicles are there now. I mean, I worked in the oil field for 20 years. They're fine vehicles. They're often, yeah, this time of year, there's a lot of them sitting on standby. more than equipped enough to just take some of the load off. Every one of these vehicles that takes somebody from hospital to hospital means that you've got some highly trained paramedics are now available somewhere else.
Right.
But
so here's the question. Who's enabling these transfers, making them happen, and who's blocking them at AHS? Well, the people who are making it happen are brave unit managers at some of the hospitals who say, look, I have 3 patients in my emerge. I've got a lot of people waiting in the hallway to get into emerge. I need these patients taken back to the nursing home right now, not 6 hours from now, not tomorrow, right now. So I'm going to phone a private company and they're going to come and get these patients. They're going to move them where they need to go, and they send the bill to Alberta Health and they get paid. And it's a reasonable fee. They're not grossly, they're not overcharging or gouging anybody, and they're getting the patients moved safely and quickly. Those brave unit managers are succeeding in this. Now there's unit managers at urgent cares in places like Cochrane and Okotoks who frankly refuse. Say, I don't care what happens, I'm not calling. I'm going to call AHS. I want an AHS ambulance because I don't want to get in trouble. So those patients, remember, some of these urgent cares close at 10 o'clock at night. If there's a serious patient in the urgent care in Okotoks, Cochrane, any one of these places, 10 o'clock comes, the urgent care closes, but that patient's still there waiting for transport. So now the urgent care manager has to keep a nurse and sometimes a doctor overnight at overtime to look after people that if they had simply called somebody else, if there was somebody else available they could call, that patient would get moved to the hospital.
So we got a big bureaucracy. You got levels and levels, unfortunately, of resistance. I mean, that's the hard thing. With a big ship, it just doesn't turn easily.
Forever.
You did mention the union, and I mean, the unions have been excellent for the paramedics in highlighting, for example, the way rural ambulances have been drained and pulled into the city and misappropriated, in my view. But at the same time, isn't there a bit of the resistance, I guess, when it comes to, because that's instinctive for a lot of unions? Well, we don't want to allow private in here, though. We can't let another group come in here and start taking care of it.
Well, look at this latest report by Michael Corman, published by the Parkland Institute, commissioned by HSAA, the union. Neither one of them are interested in talking about privatization. They're very much against it. And I would support 100% public health care if they could do the job. But I think AHS and especially EMS have proven they can't. We simply don't have the vehicles or the staff to move patients right now. And I'm not talking about, we could grow more paramedics. Do you remember that article, Bill McFarland published? He blamed the lack of paramedics these days on the low birth rate over the last several years. I laughed so hard. He wouldn't call me back. I don't think he wanted to talk about it. It takes time to train paramedics and buy trucks. New ambulances, by the way, you can look it up, wheeled coach, type 3, brand new ambulances, $240,000 US. That's prohibitive.
So over $250,000.
It's a huge investment. So we've got responsible business owners who own these trucks. They maintain them, frankly, better than AHS. I used to work on an ambulance not too long ago for AHS. Their vehicles are not well maintained. They are not clean.
You sent me that picture of the gas tank, a simple maintenance issue.
There's so many of those. They don't manage their own fleet very well, and yet they want to be able to micromanage a responsible private business owner's fleet and their staff. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to see this unfolding.
And it's frustrating to see the non-cooperative and, unfortunately, the reality politicized attitude of trying to make sure that the current government isn't successful no matter what they try. I mean, I'm really seeing some of that.
Yeah,
and when there was that leaked email about the memo, and everybody lit their hair on fire, and suddenly the government's on its heels and backtracking because the memo saying, we want these ambulances out of here within 45 minutes.
Yeah. And what did Notley say in the lead? She said, patients are going to get dumped and emerge. Okay, let's back the truck up. Number one, that email was written internally from a manager at the ER to her staff. And quite frankly, I think that's an email written by a weak leader. That whole attitude of that was, we're going to fail, look out. You know what? That 45-minute target time that's a target. It's not a hard stop on March 15th, 45 minutes, we're going to leave. No, I mean, nurses and paramedics are very responsible. We're never just going to drop people and run away. That's especially if they need extra care. So that's a target time. March 15th was going to be a slow rollout. It wasn't well publicized, but the medics and the nurses knew about it. We're all kind of cooperating. What's the goal here? The goal is to move patients into the hospital in a timely and efficient manner so that we can then extricate the medics out of the hospital, get them back into the communities where they serve, so that patients aren't waiting an hour for. Corey, as people are scared. Like we have all of these citizen action groups, and that is the primary comment now on most of our citizen action groups is, you know what, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I call an ambulance, I'm not going to be able to get one. I might have to drive my mom to the hospital myself.
And setting a target at 45 minutes to get somebody in, drop off, do the paperwork, do the transfer, and get out. I mean, that's the goal. And that's that sounds unreasonably long already.
It's twice as long as we used to drop them off. And not only that, but the Canadian standard for turnaround times in hospitals in Emerge is 45 minutes. Alberta is the outlier right now with AHS's 90-minute turnaround time. It's and it's gone on far too long. Like I said, they've had years to fix this. And again, making it clear the government can only do so much. There's legislation that prevents them from moving too quickly to make changes at AHS. That's for a reason. But AHS has got a responsibility here that they've failed to fulfill. And I think at the end of the day, this is a leadership problem. And we need erasing the board, the healthcare board, was a great move. Moving on from having our chief paramedic in charge, and now we have a provincial lead, a provincial head of EMS, Athana Metsalopoulos. She's done some work before with the red tape reduction project. I think she's very skilled. So I'm looking forward to some positive changes, but again, alternative transport, that should be happening right now. Not next week, not 2 weeks from now, not 3 months from now, certainly. The vehicles and the equipment and the people are ready to do it right now, and they're needed right now.
Well, yeah, and it's a solution in front of our faces. I mean, a lot of the things that, again, we listen to, and I won't even go left, right. We're hearing it in every province, but they're saying, we need more money, more money. Well, no, if there's only a finite number of bodies, you can pump all the money in there that you want. I mean, if we're talking about nurses and doctors, but when we are talking about patient transfer, actually, we do have the means handy. We have the trucks, we have the people.
Yep.
Money will take care of that
and
one.
It's not expensive. That's the thing. These guys aren't looking for a windfall. I'm not sure exactly what the financial structure is going to be. I hear it's going to be a flat fee based on so many transfers a day. Here's the interesting thing, though. What AHS wants is total control of these private operators' resources. In other words, they want to put an MDT in the truck, a computer, so the crews have to learn how to use that. They want to control. I hear there's going to be a rule that they can't refuse a transfer. So if you're offered a transfer, or you're told to do a transfer at the end of the day that's going to run you past the end of your shift, that's fine. In EMS, we understand late trips. But if it's going to happen 3 times out of 4 shifts that you end up doing a late trip, I mean, this is what they're doing to the Emerge crews now, keeping them late, running them hard, burning them out,
yeah.
And that's why 40% of them are off sick. So again, I've talked to some of these people who work as they used to work for AHS, but now they've left AHS. They don't want anything to do with AHS EMS. And they've gone to work for these private operators. They say, what are you going to do the first time somebody says you have to stay late and do a transfer? He goes, that's not going to go well.
Well, and unfortunately,
that's why I left.
It sets up some of the conflict potentially too, and that's what I get fearful of when they start basically already creeping in and turning these alternative transport vehicles into full-out ambulances. You give it 2 more years, next thing you know, well, now we're going to require you to be unionized. Now we're going to require your certification to be up to paramedic level. Next thing you know, you're back to basically AHS ambulances on the road again that can be tied up very expensively doing patient transfers that we were trying to avoid in the first place.
Yeah, that kind of creep. I guess I hadn't thought of that. It's certainly possible. My focus is the immediate problem right now of just the patient who's right now in the High River Hospital. She's an inpatient. She needs a stretcher to get to South Health Campus to get an MRI. Right now, the nurses will phone and say, I need an ambulance tomorrow to move a patient on a stretcher for MRI. If she doesn't make that appointment, that MRI sits empty, she doesn't get looked after, and that's happening over and over and over. And that can be changed. That's a stable stretcher patient that could go. Now, here's the other problem. This alternative transport issue that AHS has got planned isn't going to affect any communities outside of a 50-kilometer radius from Calgary or Edmonton, big centers. So if you live in Banff or Canmore, you're outside. No, that's not going to affect you. Or if you live in Sundre. Sundre right now is moving patients sometimes by taxi to the city. And their concern at the hospital is who's going to pay for that? So when I heard that question, I said, send it to Alberta Health Services. Send it to the same people these other paramedical outfits send. I mean, that should be paid for by this organization, AHS, that said they were going to take care of EMS and inter-hospital transfers, and quite frankly, isn't doing a good job. they're not doing a good job now. Now they want to take on the additional monster of alternative transport.
They'd welcome, take some of this off our hands because we got a million other things we're
Right.
dealing
And AHS believes that there's no amount of managers that they can hire. We're always going to need one more manager. So that's another. I think the whole thing's crazy. They're not doing themselves a service. They're not doing patients any service. And I'd like to see them move forward with a quicker solution.
Well, we've been talking about it for years, and that's part of the issue. And I mean,
should have happened years ago.
Governments move very slowly with it. We keep bringing up. I mean, it was that horrific case of that woman who was attacked by dogs, and most definitely could have possibly been saved with a quicker response. She was a 10-minute drive from the biggest hospital in Alberta.
So let me jump on this. Another little side note here: the Health Quality Council of Alberta, they're the ones who did the report on the fatal dog bite. They left out all of the issues with leadership. They didn't mention leadership and poor leadership not even once. I spoke. I phoned them and said, "Can I come in and talk to you?" In 2018, I went to the Health Quality Council. I made a presentation. I said, "Your little focus website you have with all the times," I said, "keep some EMS stats, response times, hospital turnaround times, hospital wait times." "Oh yeah, we can't do that. We're really busy." I said, "No, this is important, and this is healthcare. This is EMS. This is hospital. Yeah, no, we're too busy." I got blown off by them 2 or 3 times. And you know what? Now I see them doing this fatal dog bite review, and I go, "You guys dropped the ball. Health Quality Council of Alberta dropped the ball 4 years ago. They could have got in front of this and actually been part of the solution rather than sweeping up the mess with this report on that fatal dog bite attack."
So getting on to the solution, how do you? You're trying piecemeal. We've got things that are proposed here and there, but again, you got that big monstrous leviathan of a bureaucracy with the AHS. What can government or people or just anybody do? How? That's the hardest question. I mean, the solutions, but how can we get this machine to embrace the solutions?
Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to talk to the people that are doing the work. Right now, the only time they talk to the people that have solutions or make suggestions is they punish them. Take a look at that paramedic right now who's been disciplined multiple times. For speaking up, simply FOIPing documents and going and speaking to a reporter. Brave kid. He's a brave guy. He's got a family. He could lose his job. He won't quit fighting. And it's unfortunate that's what it has to come to. And again, that's a leadership issue. You want my opinion of what we should do now? The first thing we should do is we should start replacing some of the people that are leaders in this organization. Not just EMS, but the hospitals too. Quite frankly, how many years have they had to solve issues like access block, moving patients from emerge into the hospital? And I hear all the time, number one, it's a long-term care problem. Okay, great, you've got a problem. Not an EMS problem, right? And then they tell me, well, we're all on the same team for patient care. I said, well, I agree. We're all on the same team for patient care in the hospital. But don't forget, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it's 40 below, and I'm in a ditch on the side of a highway at an overturned car, I don't see anybody from the hospital on my team. That's an EMS responsibility. Picking people up who've been hurt and are sick critically in communities, that's my job.
Well, and that's a specialized skill. It takes a certain kind of person to do it. Just as an EMS, a paramedic wouldn't necessarily be a good nurse. I mean, that's a separate skill as well. And
I know people who are both nurses and paramedics. They're fantastic people. And I know terrific practitioners who are able to straddle that. I never could. I mean, I was a good paramedic at best. I've worked with some great clinicians, great paramedics. I think some of the things that I've seen are process issues. Why is this taking so long? Where's the paperwork? Why am I here when this has to be done? And again, in EMS, when you show up on a call and somebody's critically ill, we're trained to move very quickly. And then we drive lights and siren to the hospital and you give report to triage and they send you down the hallway and you're going, are you kidding? Like, this guy's sick. But their process is different and their problems are different. Now, back to my original point, which is if you can't find somebody to fix these hospital problems, start replacing people.
Well, and there's something, consequences for senior managers. And something I want to bring up is, AHS, it was a representative who was caught in an outright lie. That was on the documentary, the great one with CTV with Kathy Lee.
Yep.
When he said, we do not discipline people for speaking up. And then right after it pops up, well, here's one being disciplined for speaking up. Now, there should be consequences for him lying to the public on a critical issue like this. There was no consequence.
You know, it's funny. One of the managers mentioned, well, he retired, and I go, well, did he retire or was there? And he goes, actually, we can't talk about it. I said, well, if you can't talk about it, he probably didn't just retire, did he? So, and that's more of that needs to happen. But again, what's the biggest problem after leadership is transparency and accountability. AHS doesn't want people FOIPing data. They make it very difficult to actually get, and they, you know, these presentations that EMS goes out to, they send executive directors out to speak to these town councils in these small towns, and they just baffle them with all this gibberish, which is what it is if it's medicine, right? And it's all these statistics and a PowerPoint, and really town councils should be going, wait, I don't need any more information. Where's my ambulance? I want it here when my people need it. And that should be just a line in the sand. And like Jeff Ganung, the mayor of Cochrane, said after the last presentation in Cochrane, he said, look, people here are scared. And after years of asking for better service, trust has been eroded. People don't trust AHS anymore. He says, we got to repair that.
Well, and you've been very active in Cochrane out there. I mean, you've got some great people working on things out there and doing stuff.
Great group.
And part of what the last time you were in talking with me, we talked about was some efforts in municipalities to say, you know what, screw you guys, we'll take care of it ourselves. We will do it. And right. But that's where we're seeing the creep with AHS seem to, well, we're going to find ways to regulate this out of existence too.
Well, here's an interesting one. Fire departments. You saw what happened in the MD of Willow Creek. The MD of Willow Creek bought 3 ambulances. Now, you can't call them that because it's against the law. Yeah. It's a fire department, paramedical response, whatever. It's an ambulance. So they bought 3 of them. And they put one in Fort McLeod and Claresholm in Nanton because they saw repeatedly that they were spending long time on scene with critical patients who they needed to move. And how many times, I think Canmore, just last weekend moved a patient in the fire truck to the hospital. We don't have a lot of details. We don't need a lot of details. We've all heard the stories, but now, listen, and I think it's my opinion, and this is what I've told people, is every fire department in Alberta should have an ambulance, a fire paramedical response vehicle. Yeah. But if for 3 reasons. Number one, you go to a big fire, that's a good place to rehab your firefighters. Get them in, take a pressure if you need to. Number 2, it's a safe place to look after people at a car crash on the highway, out of the elements. You got a place where you can literally sit 8 people so they're not freezing cold, sitting in their overturned car or standing on the side of the road. And 3, it's a place you can use as a base for treatment. You go over and you find a lady who's fallen and broken her hip in her driveway. You're going to leave her in the snow for 40 minutes till AHS gets there, or are you going to put her in a nice warm bus design? And number 4, if you have to transport, giddy up. You phone medical control. You say, listen, I got a lady here who's really sick. AHS is too far away. Hospital's 10 minutes away. We'd like to go.
Well, and again, and that's that overlap of the skills too.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, we know that there's a degree of emergency health training for firefighters, but they are firefighters. Their primary role is getting that fire out. We don't expect the paramedic to go into a place where there's propane tanks ready to blow and knowing what to do with that. And we don't expect the firefighter to be the best paramedic around.
Well, hang on. I'll disagree with you there because Cochrane has a number of, I think they have 8 or 10 people who are trained to the absolute top paramedic level. A lot of them work part-time for EMS. They're terrific practitioners. I would work with any one of them. I would let them treat my family. They're terrific paramedics. There's also small services, volunteer services in towns where they really have the minimum MFR, medical first responder training. And they do a great job too. They can do CPR, they can stop the bleeding, they can hold somebody's head still in a crash. But there's lots of fire departments who quite frankly could run an ambulance service tomorrow better than AHS could. And I encourage every fire department to get an FPRV.
And I won't devolve into the Pritis issues as we have in my area. I mean, and our proximity to the city means we are constantly drained of our local resources, and it's frustrating.
Pritis is known as the bitch truck. Yeah. Nobody wants to work it because it's never there.
No, it's too close to the city. It's just there, ripe for the taking.
Yeah, it goes to cover everywhere else, and it just means that maybe you don't deserve the same coverage as the city. Yeah, it doesn't sit well, does it?
No.
Sure doesn't.
They've got a resident down there who's going to make more noise about that yet.
That's good to hear.
All right. Well, there's so much to cover. And I mean, it goes fast when I have you in, Don. We'll have to have you back because this issue is just so frustrating, so stupid, so relatively easy at least to bring in some solutions. And we've got resistance to those solutions. It just ticks me off every time. I really appreciate that you keep bringing it up and highlighting it and putting this stuff on the web and Facebook and such. So before I let you go, where can people find more info? Because I know people are concerned everywhere with this one, but it's a shotgun approach.
Right, because you're seeing it in the news all the time. So we found Facebook to be really effective. Citizen action groups in each community are springing up, and people are working together to try to put pressure on AHS locally and also on their town councils, give them good advice and back them up. And I really hope that R.J. Sigurdsson, who's doing great work as the parliamentary secretary, I really hope that he starts touring around the province and meeting with people in these towns and talking about EMS and I encourage people locally, especially in the smaller communities, to get together and start working on solutions. Call me anytime. You can find me on the web.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Don, and I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Thanks, Corey.
All right.
Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access.